Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you for joining us for the Australian Book Lovers podcast, episode 113. Our mission is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature that spans a whole range of genres to book lovers around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller, and more about bestsellers coming up in the news. I'm Veronica Strachan, aka V.E. Patton, fantasy, memoir, science fiction and picture book writer, your co-founder and co-host for today, coming to you from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country.
And I'm Laurie Bell. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author, blogger, short story writer, flash fiction writer, and your co-host today, coming to you also from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country.
Who has given
Welcome
us a
everyone.
beautiful, welcome everyone. And it's a beautiful winter day like we do
It is.
like to have down in Melbourne. Crisp,
Yes. Yep.
shiny,
Yep.
sunny.
Freezing.
Here we are inside,
Freezing.
but we're talking about books, so it doesn't matter.
Best part
much
of
to talk
winter
about.
is sitting in front of a heater with a book.
Yes.
Yes.
And I did stoke up the fire before we
Yes.
started the session so that
Yep.
by the time I get out there, it'll all be nice and ready to go. If I can move the
Nice.
dogs out of the way, because they spend winter in front of the fire, that'll be good. Particularly one dog who likes to put his feet up on the hearth and get his chest all warm and his face. And sometimes then he'll come over and he's like burning. So what are you doing?
Nice.
No, he loves it. Loves the fireplace.
I have the cats that sit right under the vents.
Yes.
All their little beds are scattered right under a vent and they just won't move.
Yeah. That's the cozy spot. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So our first
Yes.
job has to be to shout out to our new subscribers. And
Yes.
we did mention last week that we had Hayley Walsh is a new subscriber, which is fantastic. And their contribution to helping us put the podcast on is just
Marvelous.
wonderful. It's absolutely brilliant. So we're just going to
Brilliant.
mention Hayley's books because, of course, she's also an author.
Yes.
And I think because she also had her own podcast, she did a couple of seasons and she was, very much a part of it. And I was a guest on her podcast as well, which was great.
Yep.
But let's talk about Hayley's books.
Yes. I have to do a massive shout out to Making March, because Making March is the fun. Hayley has such a way with comedy. She just can layer that in and just drop in little bits that have you laughing out loud. And I remember riding my exercise bike as I was reading, because, I'm not going to not read. I get bored very quickly. And so I'm sitting there with the book, right, laughing out loud, like to tears. Brilliant. Love her words. She's fantastic.
Very funny. Yes.
Yeah.
So Making March was her first full-length novel, and the blurb is Kate feels alone and regrettably round. It's the 1st of February, and today happens to be her 40th birthday. This month she must survive a pending divorce, raising her offspring spawn from Satan, being maid of honour, a fellow bridesmaid from hell, multiple dress fittings, and her meddling mother. Can she make it to March without losing her marbles? And really, it is very funny. So
Yes.
just anybody who wants a good read, a nice, light-hearted, tongue-in-cheek, Making March is a classic. And I love that slightly older woman protagonist who is...
Yes. Well, I related to it so much from being in my 40s. And there were just so many bits. I'm like, yep, body falling apart. Yep.
That's it.
Tick. Yeah, that's hilarious. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
And Kaylee's other book, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, and Not Dead Yet, which is another one of her fantastic books, which also features, in this case, a much older protagonist. And that's just a beautiful book too. Really enjoyed that as well.
It is. And I think Hayley's daytime job as a clinical nurse in the profession in aged care really contributes to her great insight into older people and the ways and things. So Not Dead Yet is a fabulous one about a recent widow. Have a look at that. And then also Crayons and Chaos.
Yes. No, I haven't got to that yet. Have you read that one yet?
No, but I have read her other two. So 43-year-old Natalie left her joke of a marriage. Since meeting a wonderful new man, she's been catapulted into the life of instant stepmom to 2 miniature terrorists. And I think, again, really taking life as she finds it and putting it in a story. Can she find her place among the chaos, which is brilliant. And, of course, her new book that we're waiting for is Scattered Scones. So there's bits and pieces of excerpts that you can find if you follow Hayley, and her website is Hayley, Hayley, walshauthor.com. And, have a look in there. And, of course, she's on all of the Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, all of those kind of things as well. So thank you, Hayley, for the support. Yep. And also, thank you to Nadine Abrahams, because while we chatted with Nadine last week, and she was obviously very excited, so we really appreciate that Nadine has also become a subscriber, which is brilliant.
Thank you, Nadine. That is just marvellous. And it definitely helps us with being able to post out our lovely goodies to our subscribers every month, which I'm sure there's another giant stack, Veronica, that you've got to go.
There's so many books. I might get another newsletter out, because otherwise it's, And I will say, I'll wait till we do the book spotlights, but there's one very special one that I've been waiting for quite a while. But I think before book spotlights, we need to talk about the news.
The news.
What is happening in the book publishing industry? Readers and writers, get ready. Here comes the news.
You know what? I want to bring up an article that came out this week on the ABC, where they were talking about that there was the reference to the collapse of Booktopia and just how that really was a publishing, a bookstore that was doing a lot of the posting and supporting of Australian writers, and they did have a really big Australian book following. So anyway, the article came out, excuse me, Mal.
If anyone who's not watching on video, we just had a little tabby tail troop across in front of Laurie. They love a bit of attention.
Oh, they do, particularly when they get bored with the news. Okay, so well, what they did mention in the article that I found was really interesting, it's always a good reminder, is just the size of Australia compared to the US in regard to bestsellers and what it means to be a bestseller. And actually, I think in your lovely interview with Sue-Ellen Pashley later on today, what does it mean to be a bestseller and what does it mean to be published? So the interesting thing is in the US, to be a bestseller, you need to sell between 1,000 and 10,000 copies in 1 week. That's what's considered a bestseller in the US. In Australia, we are a lot smaller, because for us, if your book sells 5,000 copies over its entire lifetime, that's what's considered a bestseller in Australia. So come on, Aussies, you need to get out there and you need to be reading more books. read more Aussie books. Our market is just a lot smaller, and it really shows the difference there with, particularly for publishing houses when they're pushing books and marketing, and the same with indie authors. It really doesn't, it's not a huge number to hit, but it's tough to get there. If you're only selling 5,000 books and you're considered a bestseller, if you've got an advance from a bigger publishing house, getting to that point, if you're specifically in the Australian market, is almost impossible to have that happen. But tough.
It is tough.
We do it because we love it.
We do it because we love it.
It would be nice to get some money though.
It would. So we must have been on the same kind of realm of reading, because I was going through the Australian Society of Authors, having just remembered to resubscribe, put my subscription, to pay for my subscription for the Australian Society of Authors, because I have always been behind unions to protect people who and advocate well, and of course the Australian Society of Authors are really good advocates and have authors got their first electronic payments for the public lending rights, and which is fantastic this year. So again, that was for the ASA. And also just a quick goodbye to their Olivia Lanchester, who was their CEO. So she's moved on to other things as well. And we did chat to Olivia on a very early episode of the podcast. So good luck in her new ventures. Anyway, back to this, the VIP forum. So the ASA was invited to attend Creative Australia's Visiting International Publishers Forum, which is fantastic. So as we know, Creative Australia is trying to zooz up the market in all sorts of arts things. Quick market updates. Audiobooks continue to be a growing market, except in Germany, where they've stagnated. Inflation is reducing profits for publishers, but people are still buying books. Growing categories in the US book market, you like this, romance and speculative fiction, including fantasy and horror. So Nadine Abrahams, she was right on the money, and you and I are in the right kind of realm at this place. Perhaps we should put more horror in our books. In the US, the library market has been affected by book banning, which I can't even believe that they're even talking about. And this is predominantly, of course, affecting children's books. So it's really worth a read. At the ASA, they have news, and actually, I don't think you have to be a member to log in just for their news. All the advocacy stuff and the special things that they do for members is behind the paywall, I guess you call it. They talk about trends in crime, and for example, Germany's got a great cozy crime market. It's a growth market in the Czech Republic. Foreign rights manager Andrea Stradilova said cozy crime doesn't work at all. In fact, the more gruesome crime novel, the better. So they like serial killers, and in the US, the crime thriller category is flat, but younger readers gravitate towards horror. So, it's from an author's perspective, it's notoriously questionable and difficult to write to trends, partly because by the time your work's published, the trend may already be waning, but also because the latest fad may not engage you, which is quite true. Now, we mentioned romantasy is booming for young women aged 18 to 25, but where will they be in 5 or 10 years' time when your book or books start to happen? And that's what we spoke about, Laurie, before we were chatting, before we recorded.
Yes.
We thought we should have, been recording. However, part of predicting the next trend is investigating the upcoming stages of a reader's life. Regardless, our takeaway for authors is that being aware of trends is most helpful regarding positioning for pitching. So that's good.
Which I still am on a rant about because when you pitch a book, you need to have a couple of comps. They like to have a comparison. Where would you sit in the market? Where would you sit on a shelf? But the problem is you're comping to books that when you write your book or when you're pitching it, you're comping. But when your book comes out in 3 or 4 years, as is quite often the case, those books are down the list, and there's a whole bunch of new books that would be compared to. So it's really hard when you have to pitch your book. How do you position yourself with comps that might be well and truly out by the time you get to actually market and sell your book? It's tough, but a lot of the agents are asking for only within the last 2 or 3 years. That is so hard for an author.
It is very hard. It is. And just at the end, success in the book industry, the last part of this, please read the whole thing because I've just picked out some little bits. What was emphasised by the panel was how important matchmaking was for success in publishing, particularly finding the right home for a book. So while the author might think publishing with a large multinational publisher would lead to greater sales than if they publish with a small independent publisher, this is not always true. And, our guest author today, Sue-Ellen Pashley, talks about that as well. Because authors can get lost in a big list, and if sales are especially low, they can't rely on the continued support of that publisher. But to be the lead title at a smaller publishing house could mean more support for your work and potentially lead to greater sales.
And the smaller publishers know how to pitch a book because they really understand why they chose the book and where they want to pitch it and market it, even though the marketing budget would be a lot less. In some cases, a lot of indie authors are doing the marketing themselves, but that being able to pitch it exactly where you want to sell your books, the smaller guys can sometimes be a lot better than the bigger publishing houses where you get a little bit lost in the giant list of names.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting.
So just adding on that one more little bit from this article, which is the VIP's Forum, Crime, Younger Readers and Unexpected Success from the ASA. The Simon & Schuster publisher Eamon Dolan said 80% of the titles they publish are not particularly successful in terms of sales. Within the 20% that are, there are different magnitudes of success, which makes the business of publishing possible. Interestingly, so you all mentioned about comp titles, while Eamon found it impossible to predict success, there we go, he noted books that are difficult to find comp titles for had typically been bestsellers because they filled gaps in the market. Having said that, of course, it's important to include the comp titles when you're pitching. So, you know, even if it's filling a gap, people need to have some kind of idea where you are pitching towards.
Yep. Isn't that fascinating?
That is fascinating. Yes. Yeah. So, and I'm happy to say to people that I'm going to do a pitch. I'm not going to tell you who to or whatever, but I'm going to do a pitch in a few weeks. So we'll see how I go. And if I sound really sad in a few weeks, it'll be hilarious. But it's a practice pitch. It's not actually, well, it is a real pitch, but yeah, anyway, we'll see how we go. So there you are. I think that is some great news. And I have one more little thing that I wanted to mention. Literary listeners who, we know what we quote them a lot for their events, festivals and all those kind of things, but they've got some interesting stats on libraries. And okay, it is Victorian based, so sorry people, have a look on your own state and see. But did you know Victoria is home to 47 public library services that house an incredible 291 library branches?
Really?
Isn't that amazing? I am so proud of Victoria.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, how many books per person in Victoria, but I'd love to find that out. I love those kind of stats. That really, it's great.
Yep. Yeah. And just a very quick shout out. Oops, sorry, throwing my sound around. So the NAIDOC Week Award finalists were announced this week. There was also the ACT Literary Awards 2024 winners were announced. And what I love about the ACT winners is that they also include self-published books. Get onto that competition, I think I need to do. So that was so they actually had a category with the winners with fiction, the winner in a traditionally published, and then a self-published winner, which was absolutely amazing. And I wanted to shout out to two of our lovely listeners who released cover reveals this week. So we love a good cover reveal. We love a good hint to a book that's coming out. So the lovely Dr. Helen Edwards showed her cover for The Legend of the Lighthouse Moon by Riveted Press, and Nikki Lee Rarkin's Fall, which I am hanging out for. The cover reveal came out for that. Looks amazing. I am really looking forward to those ones when they come out. I love a good tempting book cover that just makes me want to get all over it.
Yes, which is good.
Yeah.
And talking about NAIDOC Week, of course, the Karagia Awards is the first award honouring First Nations children's books and authors writing about country, community and language in Australia. And we're just working in the background. As our listeners may know, we had 4 specials last year, 3 with authors and illustrators and 1 with judges. We are going to have a couple this year, but we're just organising the logistics of that. And we'll get back to you. So we have, lovely Isabel Bevis, Victor Stephenson, who was last year as well, Auntie Munya Andrews, and a particular standout is Dejuan Hoosen, who was shortlisted for his book In My Blood It Runs. I don't know whether you saw that. It was a 2019 documentary of the same name. This young fella, he was the youngest person ever to address the Human Rights Council at the United Nations at 12 years old. So, fantastic. And judges on the Karagia panel are Dr. Amy Thunig, a Gomeroi Research Fellow within the Jumbunna Institute for Indigenous Education and Research, as well as educator Danae Coots and previously shortlisted author Jasmine Seymour. So keep your eye on that. They are the shortlist for this year's, and we'll see the winners. But they're all winners. They're such beautiful books and such incredible knowledge. Some non-fiction, some picture books. And some a little bit older, which is fantastic.
That's awesome.
Beautiful. And they'll be on the website as soon as I finish loading them up.
So and there is going to be a little refresh, I think, to the website soon.
The website. I've seen some of the potentially new looking websites. So it's going to be fabulous. Which is lovely. So please keep bringing your books in. I really feel like we might need to increase the number of books in our book spotlights because we're just not
getting through it. There are a lot of books.
Yes. Yes.
It's wonderful.
Fantastic. And, Aussie authors keep supporting each other, which is just brilliant as well. So I think it's time for some book spotlights. What do you reckon?
Yep.
Book spotlights. This week we have The End and Everything Before It by Finegan Kruckemeyer, which is a contemporary book, which is, really interesting. I love the cover, and we do have a copy of this in future giveaways. So if you're interested, jump on to australianbooklovers.com/booklovers and sign up if you don't already subscribe. Emma watched her mother's kayak disappear among icebergs in the Arctic Sea. 6 years later, her brother, who had not spoken since the mother was lost, warns Emma of the curse of death that she brought to anyone who looked on her face, before tragedy befalls him too. Emma consigns herself to a solitary life at sea, where she can do no more harm. After years alone, she's mysteriously drawn to land, and she docks at an island, afraid of what her arrival might mean for the welcoming man and his daughter waving from the jetty. But who knows where our stories begin and end, or how they are entwined? Who knows whether now, on the island, she begins a new tale, or takes a role in a story that began generations ago with a feast in the forest, or a chest of gold coins plunged into the sea, or an orphan in a bookshop beguiled by an elusive and troubled woman. Finegan Kruckemeyer's astonishing debut, The End and Everything Before It, is a sweeping, joyous novel about love, loss, and the power of stories, an uplifting journey into our deepest humanity.
Wow. So Finegan was born in Ireland and moved halfway around the world to Adelaide, aged 8. After 15 years, he and his wife left for the island state of Tasmania. And after 15 more with their son Mo, they returned to Adelaide. There you go. Big shout out to SA. He is an award-winning playwright whose works have been performed on 6 continents and in 8 languages. The End and Everything Before It is his first novel. There's that play. There's that theatre line again.
It is, isn't it?
He was one of 21 selected worldwide for the, and I'm going to have to spell this one, ASSITE Next Generation, ASSITE, ASSITE Next Generation, Young Leaders in Children's Theatre, and has sat on numerous arts boards, including the Australian Script Centre and Tasmanian Arts Advisory Board, Arts Tasmania's assistance to individuals Tas Literary Awards and Arts Bridge panels, and the Story Island Project Board, promoting youth literacy and empowerment through storytelling with marginalised young people. He is committed to making strong and respectful work for children, which acknowledges them as astute audience members outside the play and worthy subjects within. So yes, I love the idea of having the children acknowledged outside and inside the play, because it's the same with writing for any young adult or middle grade. Kids are so smart. They are smarter, and you know what? They will call you out on it.
They absolutely will.
Call you out on it.
All right, let's look at Oblivion by Patrick Holland, which is science fiction. The blurb described as lyrical and atmospheric. As the influence of the West falls away, an unnamed narrator drifts through the East's floating world of non-places, chain hotels, airports, megacities, finalising often covert operations and deals. When he meets the enigmatic and beautiful Tien, a 21st century floating world courtesan, he becomes involved with people and events that threaten his plan to escape life via various forms of oblivion. Evocative and sparely written in the tradition of the Mary Smokes Boys, Oblivion is a novel where the journey becomes the story, filled with acute observation, desire, and dreams.
Love that description. So Patrick Holland is a novelist and short story writer. He is the author of 7 books, most notably The Mary Smokes Boys, which was 2010, which was longlisted for the Miles Franklin Award and is currently being made into a feature film. His work has been recognised by awards, including the Miles Franklin, the Dublin Literary Award, the International Scott Prize, and the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, and has been published, performed, and broadcast in Australia, the USA, Hong Kong, UK, and Ireland, Italy, and Japan. Patrick is currently Assistant Professor of Creative Writing at Hong Kong Baptist University and divides his time between Hong Kong and Brisbane. Love a good sci-fi.
Yes, love a good sci-fi. And we don't, set this up, and sometimes just get a little flurry. Like last time, I think we had a little flurry of contemporary. This time is a little flurry of more, in the speculative fiction.
Yeah.
But wait for this one.
All right.
All You Took From Me by Lisa Kenway, which is a thriller, a psychological thriller. And lordy wordy, I'm about halfway through this and loving it.
Really?
Loving it. Yes, indeed. I've been waiting for this one for a while because, Lisa and I followed each other on when we had the fabulous Oz Rights group on Twitter. And yes, and because it's got so much medical stuff in, I just love it. It's like, that's my language. It feels right. Anyway, All You Took From Me by Lisa Kenway. Set between the Blue Mountains and a Sydney hospital, Lisa Kenway's All You Took From Me is a thriller brimming with great characters and nail-biting tension. Anaesthetist Claire Carpenter has just lost her husband and her memory in a single vehicle accident. So why is a stranger following her? After questioning patients about their dreams, she becomes convinced that an anaesthetic drug might help her access missing memories. But there's no way to be certain without jeopardizing her career or her life. As unexplained threats escalate, Claire realizes she must take matters into her own hands to learn the uncomfortable truth about her secretive husband, his connection to a mysterious club, and what she did to trigger a stranger's crusade for vengeance. But how far will she go? So there's a couple of reviews, which is fabulous, truly exciting. It's a rare treat to read a book that I'm still thinking about long after the last page. The surprising reveals are both earned and satisfying. Readers are destined to fall in love with the ways Kenway brings such expertise and a unique perspective to the psychological thriller genre. That's Shelley Burr, author of Wake and Ripper. I am going to read this one because this is from Ashley Kalajian-Blunt, author of Dark Mode, who we've chatted to as well. And I love Dark Mode. That was really good. And this, it's kind of the perfect description, a taut psychological thriller with a driving plot. And that's, I absolutely agree with you, Ashley. All You Took From Me interrogates the limits of memory, both lost and recovered. From its compelling opening mystery, every page bristles with threat and intrigue. Fantastic. So yes, that is All You Took From Me by Lisa Kenway. Yes. Oh,
yes.
Okay. Go. Tell us about Lisa.
Yes, Lisa Kenway is an Australian writer and anaesthetist, and her debut novel was inspired by her long-standing fascination with memory and consciousness. And I find memory so fascinating just as a topic, just in general, and I have a few memory things pop up in my books too. An earlier version of All You Took From Me was listed for the 2020 Ritual Prize and was runner-up in the 2022 CYA Conference competition, Stories for Adults. Lisa was awarded a Catherine Susanna Pritchard Writers Centre Fellowship for 2023 and was highly commended in the 2022 Writing New South Wales Varuna Fellowships. Her work has been published widely in journals and anthologies, including Island Online, the Meanjin blog, and Meniscus Literary Journal. There's those lots of scientific words coming up there that I got to get my head around. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. I love that sort of, I think that really gives you that thriller with when it comes to memory and what you remember and how you remember things and if you remember things.
Yes, and another one, of course, is Memories Don't Lie by Pauline Yates. Again,
yes,
that kind of memory. Nice. So, that is pretty fabulous. And no spoilers. I'm glad there were no spoilers in the reviews because I'm absolutely loving it. All right. Another crime one. This is Humidity by Dan Kaufman. So, kicked out of a low-rent boarding school, Ben ends up working as a nude model in a small town where the violence is rampant. The humidity's hell and the men don't appreciate him stripping for their girlfriends. Desperately lonely, he falls for Marty, an ambitious and violent young woman who's rapidly taking over her brother Shane's drug and gun running trade. Marty's the first person to show Ben any affection, and so he ignores the warnings of his housemate Dave, who suspects Shane of murdering one of his dealers. Marty doesn't like Dave and stashes the murder weapon, a knife, in his kitchen. Ben starts working in the pub that Marty and Shane run as a front and initially likes the protection his new dog gives him, especially as one of the bikies, Tomo, has it in for him and Dave. However, the deeper Ben gets pulled into this dark world of bikies and crime, the more violent his life becomes, especially when Dave then disappears and he tries to find out what happened. Humidity is an Aussie noir coming-of-age thriller propelled by the vicious and vulnerable anti-heroine who the young protagonist falls for. Laced with dark humour, this crime novel is set in a small Australian country town dominated by the ice trade and the crime that goes with it, from stealing guns and cattle to prostitution. It's within this violent world that the characters try to find a home for themselves, juggling conflicting forces of family, loyalty, love, and respect. Oh, and self-respect. Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
that's another fascinating one, that one.
Yes.
So Dan Kaufman spent most of his career at the Sydney Morning Herald, where he edited almost every section at one time or another, from travel to health and science. He also wrote for almost every section, including essays and literary articles for Spectrum, in addition to being the bar reviewer until the paper came to its senses and realised it was paying him to get liquored up. There's a job. Like getting paid for writing. It would be great.
Yeah.
So his short stories and poems have been published in a variety of journals. He was longlisted for the Great Australian Yarn Award, shortlisted for the Lord Mayor's Creative Awards in Melbourne, and published his first novel, Drowning in the Shallows, in 2020 during the same month that the pandemic hit. Oh, you poor thing. He's still in therapy. So I think we can all understand that one. Yeah, my second book actually the Tiger's Eye came out right at the start of the pandemic. So I hear you, buddy.
Yeah, I really felt for people who had written and years and nursed a book to fruition.
Book signings getting cancelled. My one book signing I actually got pre-done, and no, I lost out. So yeah, terrible time.
It was a terrible time, but here we are. Okay, a lot of book spotlights. All of those books are on the Australian Book Lovers website. Keep your eye on it. Check out the genres that you love. Scroll through, read more Aussie books, and really support our Aussie authors.
Yes, please
do. It's a really small publishing
industry.
It is
a really small industry.
we need all the help we can get.
Yes. So I had
yeah.
a quick, just before we jump into our quotes, I had a quick fun little, and we need to get to your quiz answer from last time, because I'm dying to know. So on the Arts Hub, they had a great article that came out this week. This is hilarious. With the Paris Olympics coming up, it's only a couple of weeks away. Arts Hub decided it'd be fun to speculate what games would look like if they, rather than sporting prowess, we were looking at championing the cerebral might of wordsmiths. So what sort of sports would you have if you're in the writing world? And I loved this. This was so much fun. And so they had a few suggestions, and then you and I were both speculating earlier as to what some fun ones would be as well. So, for example, let's say the pentathlon of muses. So you could have, let's see, categories such as literature and drama, lyric or epic, orchestral and instrumental music, solo and chorus singing, drawings, graphic arts and painting, statues, reliefs, medals, plaques, and medallions. So you could really get some fun activities there. Say medals won through iambic pentameter. So apparently from 1912 to 1948, poems were submitted inspired by the idea of sport. Can you imagine having some sport activities that are done in iambic pentameter? That would be so much fun. And what about speed reading?
Yes.
So you're given a brand new book and you've got to finish it in record time, and there'd be questions at the end to see if you actually took in what you were reading. What about the puntathlon? Where medals are appointed.
All those dad jokes.
Yep, medals are appointed on a groan-worthy scale. What about what about haiku sprints?
Oh, yes. That sounds good. That sounds
That
good.
sounds pretty good.
Yes.
Yep. So I was having a think, and I thought, well, you know what, I could potentially be in the award-winning area for 100-word flash fiction
You
based on a
absolutely
prompt.
could, because you
Do it in
are
5
really
minutes.
good at that. You've been doing that for a while. I think
I've
you
been
could
doing that for a
be
while, and I
could
time myself.
represent.
I try to get it done as quick as possible. So
Yeah.
5-minute turnaround for 100 words. Let's go.
And go. Excellent. Well, I had the idea of a sesquipedalian loquaciousness marathon because I have been
Oh,
accused of just loving the use of really big words
Yep,
for absolutely
really
no
big words.
reason.
Yep.
And going on and on. So yes, there we go. The flash
Love it.
fiction, definitely. The co-authored relay, I thought could be good.
I
So
love
how do you
that.
pass the story to
Yep.
the one, and is it smooth, and then you move on to the the co-authored
Nice.
4x100 relay.
Love it.
There
Love
we
it.
go.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
definitely the flash fiction sprints. I
So
love that.
yes, I thought that gave us a bit of a giggle. So if you've got
Yes.
any ideas out there, shout them out online on our socials, because that would be hilarious. I
That
think
would
that
be very funny.
why wouldn't you have an
Well,
Olympic
I think we
Games?
should make sure that Creative Australia gets the idea for this, and that
Yes.
they go, hey,
I think that would be
we
brilliant.
could put it on.
Yeah,
Wouldn't it?
they even had a few ideas such as networking marathon,
Yes.
having writers writing competitions, so gymnastic editorial compromise. Rhythmic Twitter cancellation. Oh, I think that's a the 100-meter M dash. Love it. So
You and I would be
Yeah.
absolutely rocking that one as
Yeah.
English lovers. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So there's
Now,
so many ideas. Anyway.
Which reminded me that we really need to also mention that the Readers Are Writers workshop that Australian Book Lovers is hosting with the absolutely fabulous
Yes.
Dr. Rachel Matthews is
Yes.
on Thursday, the 1st of August.
It's coming
You
up.
don't have to get your runners on even. It is going to be via Zoom. You don't even have to turn your image on if you don't wish to, although we'd love to see your beautiful face. And it's going to be an hour and a half of writing, joy and creativity, and other people just having a little bits and pieces. And Rachel knows so much about the writing industry. It's fabulous because, of course, she's a professor of writing at the university. And please jump onto the front page of our website or any of our socials. You'll see the posts, and you just drop in, register your name, and we'll send you out the Zoom link. And there's a little document that's support with all the bits and pieces that Rachel's going to have ready for you to join us. So please do that.
Yes.
And of course, the other, if you're desperate to see me in person and realise that I'm much shorter than I look on Zoom, please come up to the Sydney Authors Inc.
Yes.
And that's on Sunday, the 4th of August. And I'm actually travelling up there to the north, and the tickets are on Humidity. So look up Sydney Authors Inc. Sunday, the 4th of August, 12:30. I'll be chatting to some of our other great supporters. So Maria P. Frino is going to be leading the chat, and we're talking about all things books and podcasting.
Excellent.
Which is really exciting.
Speaking of talking to people,
yes,
we better get on with your fabulous interview this week.
It was just lovely to talk to the delightful Sue-Ellen Pashley. She was so generous and talking about all the things. So let's just not faff about anymore and go straight to the author interview. Welcome, book lovers. We have one of, well, I won't say an interview that we fought over, both Laurie and I being fantasy aficionados, but I'm really, really pleased to have with us today Sue-Ellen Pashley. Welcome, Sue-Ellen.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Lovely to join you.
Now, Sue-Ellen, as always, I am on Wurrung country here in cool southeast Victoria. We've had a little chat about the weather, as we in Melbourne love to do. Where are you today?
I'm up in central Queensland, just outside of Gladstone, in a lovely little place called Boyne Island. And so we're on the Garang and the Taraballong and the Garang country up here. And it's, a lovely 24 degrees, central Queensland weather's winter is just beautiful.
That is cruel of you to tell me that, when I'll say it's probably about 12 down here. And as you can see, I've got jumpers. Sue-Ellen's got short sleeve. But we're going to talk about books. We're going to talk about dragons. We're going to talk about fantasy and all things writing and everything along those lines. So it doesn't really matter.
Yes, that's right. It makes us all warm, doesn't it?
It makes us all warm. Indeed it does. Indeed it does. So, Sue-Ellen, for the listeners, I'm going to share a little bit of your blurb from your website, which fabulously says, just one more chapter. I really, really like that. Just one more chapter. It's a great thing to have. And we've had a little bit of honest sharing about how sometimes that's, very late at night when we just read one more chapter, and damn those authors. Yes. All right. So Sue-Ellen Pashley is a writer of copious amounts of words, just because if they didn't come out, she's sure they'd make her head explode. Sue-Ellen is an internationally published author, with her stories having found homes in Australia, the US, UK, Germany, and Korea. She lives in a beach town in central Queensland, as we've just heard, with her family, 2 dogs, and a snake called Slide. She loves quirky shoes, dark chocolate, and good tea. Definitely the last two I'm with you. And eternal optimist. She enjoys making things difficult for her protagonist, but loves a happy ending. And with some of the romanticy, I think that's a given. You have to make a happy ending.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Now, not only that, but so she's got 5 fantasy and romance books, 8 anthologies, a children's book, plus one of her fantasy books, Aquila, has been translated into German. So you've actually got a German edition, which is just brilliant. We're going to be talking to you about Talonmarked, and I know you've got another book on the way, which we'll catch up in a minute. So, I'm pleased that you can give us a few minutes to talk, because you've got so much going on.
Yeah, it's a busy time at the moment, which is a really lovely, space to be in.
Yeah, because we know that books and publishing and all of those kind of things often for people are a part-time job, but when the busyness of launch comes, it's fantastic to get involved and to share all that enthusiasm.
Absolutely. A bit like pregnancy, really, isn't it?
Yes.
When you give birth, and you're preparing everything. Yeah.
Yeah, too true. And then after 6 weeks, people forget about you and you're there home with a screaming baby. But let's not talk about that. We love them. We love them dearly. All right. Now, Sue-Ellen, I've got to start with Talonmarked, because I think that's, what got us excited, and, being a dragon lover, let's just say. Talonmarked is an adult fantasy. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are just listening, you can't see behind Sue-Ellen on her wall. She's got all of the covers of her beautiful book. So she could just about cover 2 walls with all of them there. So that's fantastic. But the new one is not out yet. Talonmarked is this adult fantasy. Sage is searching for her lost brother, the only other family member to survive when the dragons attacked their village 10 years ago, and will do whatever it takes to see them reunited. However, of course, there's a however, a chance encounter with an injured dragon changes her destiny. Against her will, Sage is bonded with the dragon, Sava. Is that correct pronunciation?
That's right. Yep.
Thank you, Sava.
Well done.
A talon mark burned into her skin, setting her apart from other humans. But when she learns that not everything she's been told about the war is true, and that Sava has also suffered loss, she must decide whether she trusts him enough to work together to end the war. Wow, this sounds really good.
Thanks. I had lots and lots of fun writing it. Who doesn't like a dragon book?
Absolutely, yeah. So tell us a little bit about the inspiration for this particular story first up.
Look, the first bit, I've always, loved dragons. The Anne McCaffrey series was, like my go-tos.
Yes.
I don't know how many times I've read those books.
I know.
And and like the thought of being able to connect to a dragon, the thought of being able to be part of a dragon's life is just sort of incredible. But I really wanted it to be on the basis of the fact that she didn't want it to happen, that it was for her, it was a real thing that upped her life immeasurably from where it had already been, and then to see the relationship between her and Sava grow.
Wow, yeah. So is this going to be a series? So is
probably not at this stage, although you never say never.
You never say never. Yeah.
Never say never. But the story, rounds out and ends at the end. So there's a couple of other characters in there that I could probably bring in if I wanted to. But this story is a complete story as such.
Yeah. How long did it take you to write?
It took me. It started off as a much shorter story to start with, and then I looked at just expanding it into that novella form. So the first part of the story probably took me about 3 months, and then I began working full time. So the next bit of the story took me a little bit longer, as it does. So probably about 8 or 9 months all up to, I think, write the story and have it edited and make sure that I was happy with what was there.
Yeah. I noticed, I read, I think, on your website about your experiences with editing that, or it was in some of the questions that we, thank you very much for getting those back to us, that editing changes the way you see the book. It's kind of, you don't realise how fabulous editing is until you get a book edited and go, that's what it means, that's what it's worth. So, tell us about the first time you received that story back with, a fairly comprehensive edit. Not this story, but a story.
No. So my first one that I had published was called Quilla, which is the one up there behind me, which was with Penguin Random House. And it was a really interesting thing that my publisher at the time sent me back, the first rounds of edits going, it's a really clean edit, well done, there's not much that we have to change. And I looked at all the red marks in there and I thought, oh, far out, if that
was good.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it was really interesting just to sort of, and it was things like, what I'd said in 10 words, they then say in 3, and it flows much better and it's a much cleaner write, and, all of those sort of things. And I think every author has their nemesis words that, even though I check for them, in the edits, that just, all of those lovely words that just want to come into the story. So I think, part of that is being aware of those as well.
Yeah. It's kind of your mind voice. It just pours on the page, and it's not until somebody else looks at it that you go, okay.
Absolutely. Or that, you've got your character doing the same, thing every time, and you go, wow, if he scratches his head once more, I'm going to kill him. So
yes, they are our favourite things, sigh deeply, or, toss to hair. No.
And it's really interesting that it seems to change for every book. Like every character has a specific thing that I'm going, why am I doing that? But anyway.
That's good. So definitely recommend editing to people.
Definitely. Absolutely. I think even if you think you do a good edit yourself, I think there's nothing like having someone else's eyes on it to be able to pick up the things that you've missed.
Yeah. Tell me then about, let's look at anthologies and short stories versus novellas versus longer books. Your favourite to write, or did you progress from one to the other? How did that work for you?
I think that's a bit like asking your favourite child.
I know, that's hard.
Like I think there's really lovely things and really difficult things about every every part. Like my children's picture book, you have to be very judicial with every word that you write, and really leave room for the illustrator to tell part of the story as well. You don't need to tell the whole story. So I think that's, like a really different skill, for example, to, writing a full novel where I can, sometimes be as verbose as I want to be, but, and then short stories, that need to wrap everything up quite quickly, but still tell what feels like a full story and have readers engaged and satisfied with the end, I think is a whole different, skill in itself as well.
With your picture book, did you know the illustrator? Did you work closely or no?
No, my publisher, after they accepted the manuscript, had an illustrator in mind, and I certainly met her after all the drafts had been done, because she lives in Melbourne, and so she worked very closely with the illustration editor that the publisher had, and then I got to see the drafts, and if there was anything that was really sticking out to me, we talked about that. But I was very lucky in the illustrator that they picked. She does absolutely beautiful work. So it was fabulous.
Yeah. How different was it writing for that very young audience as opposed to, the YA and the, fantasy or the romantasy and the now adult?
Yeah, look, I think very different in that, like I said, you have to pick the words that you are important to say. And I think it's really important in children's fiction books to get the idea across that you're trying to do without kids feeling like you are, making them learn a lesson or be in a space where you want them to be. I'd like, it's really lovely for kids to take from the books what they would like. And it was really interesting when it came out that I would go to schools to have a chat to kids about being an author and read them the book, and the lower grades, the sort of, that prep to 4, loved the book and were happy to talk about a whole heap of different things about that. But it's the older grades, the 5s and 6s, that actually got quite a little bit emotional because the book is about giving up something that you love. And so actually got quite emotional about the things that they'd loved, that they'd had to give up, which was, as an author, is a beautiful thing to see such an emotional reaction. So it's lovely. Yeah.
That's what we dream of, isn't it? That our book touches somebody, whether it's a deep thought or laughter or love. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was beautiful.
Good. All right. I'm going to take you back to some of the questions and say, what was your favourite book as a child? Now, we've talked about Anne McCaffrey, and I will admit that I've been recollecting the Anne McCaffrey novels because I thought I've read so many of them. I'm just going to see if I can find them all in secondhand bookshops. So one particular character.
Out of the Anne McCaffrey series?
No, I was thinking Tiki Tiki Tempo. I remember Tiki Tiki Tempo, no so remember Umamuchi. Is that, yeah?
Yeah.
Yamaguchi, that one?
And I think, as a kid, it was just the feel of the name in the mouth. Tiki Tiki Tempo, no sa rembo, cherry berry ruchi, kit berry pembo.
Yes.
Just go, that's just such a beautiful thing to say. And I mean, the story was, fabulous as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's those things that stick in your memory and those things that keep bringing you back to those books that you used to love as a child,
Did your parents read to you?
A lot, yes.
A lot, yeah.
Which was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then I was, one of those kids that kept wanting books and, to read for myself and, but they were very big on reading to us when we were small, which, I'm internally grateful for. So, yeah.
Definitely. How proud are they of your books now?
Very proud. A beautiful. My mum has every book on her Kindle, and my dad has every book on his Kindle as well. And so that's a really lovely thing. And my mum just went back and reread Talon Mark and the other book that's about to come out, because they of course got advanced copies. So they've just reread them so that they can answer questions if anyone wants to ask them about their daughter's book, which is beautiful.
Fantastic. I should be interviewing them. Perhaps we should have had a group family call.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
That's good. What other books as a child were a great influence to the stories that you now love?
I think I was always into fantasy books. So, James and the Giant Peach was one of my favourite books, and just the thought of, him getting away from his horrible aunts and being, cared for by all these, huge insects, and, was a really fascinating concept. But any of the sort of fantasy books I was really keen to read and to think, I guess, that there was something a bit different in the world that perhaps we didn't know about, and how cool would that be if that was the case?
Yeah, if that really happened. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What is it that you think we love about dragons? Let's just slide into the dragon a little bit more, because, you've got dragon in this story, and so many stories as kids had fabulous dragons in it, the classic Smorg all the way through.
Absolutely.
We can move on. We won't name them all, but tell us, why do you think dragons just get our attention so much?
I think it's probably the thought of the power that a dragon has, and being able to, because in almost every book that you read about a dragon, we can communicate with the dragons, and we can, befriend the dragons. So how cool is that to have, a being that is powerful and, has their own personality and their own, want to be a part of the world. and that we can then be friends with that. And I mean, who wouldn't want to be on the back of a dragon and fly? You know.
Okay, yeah, I'm in. Absolutely, I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a fascination, isn't it? And I wonder, because I've seen dragons in so many cultures that, you know, and written on ancient walls and been in ancient stories and myths and all those kind of things. There's always that element, isn't there, of truth. And I hope with all my heart that it means that dragons were in the world and they'll come back, or they're around somewhere and that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's that thing of, you know, like, even if it's not a big dragon, then you can befriend. Wouldn't it be fantastic if it was just a small dragon that could sit on your shoulder? You know, like anything to do with dragons, I think is beautiful.
Definitely. Small dragon, I'm thinking Mulan, the cartoon, the animated cartoon, the little dragon, you know, I can't remember who played it, but that was very good. Yeah. All right. Let's go back to Talon Mark then. Your least or favourite character to write?
My favourite character was of course Sava, because and largely because you know, the premise of the story is that, you know, the dragons and the humans have been at war and have been at war for 10 years because of, you know, something that happened right back at the beginning. And when Sava, at the beginning of the book, when Sava first you know, makes the Talon mark on Sage and bonds her to him, he does that because he's been injured. And when he bonds with a human, that makes him automatically, you know, he is better straight away. So he must do it to survive himself. But he doesn't like humans, and there's a good reason beyond just the war for why he doesn't like humans. And yet he's a very ethical being as such. So there is that real hatred towards humans, but a softening towards Sage as the story goes on, because he is an ethical being and wants to do the right thing. So there is that real push-pull for him, which I really loved to write. It was a really interesting character to write because of it.
Yeah, able to really develop his beautiful. Okay, now the best response you've ever had to your writing. Let's have a look at that, because I suspect, you know, you've given us a little bit looking. I read your responses first and then started to look at your website and thought, oh, no wonder. So many beautiful books. Tell me about that response from your readers. Yeah.
I look, and I think it's lovely, I think, when you get any reader response where they've enjoyed the book, or where there's something about the book they've loved, or, you know, like, and I think, you know, there's so many little ones, I think, that just really, for the heart of an author, you just go, oh, that's so lovely to hear, because your book is so special to you that for it to have touched someone else, or, you know, been in that space with someone else, that's a lovely thing. So I think, you know, one of my readers for my first book, Aquila, you know, drew me a picture of my main male protagonist in that, which was, you know, like an incredible thing to have happen. And you know, like with other instances, you know, like the kids at primary school, you know, like I was saying, you know, I've had, when I've gone along to popcons, I've had you know, young people come up to me and say, oh, I read that book last year, have you written the second one for that yet? So, you know, I had a mum in the UK who texted me, who sent me a picture of her child reading The Jacket over there and said it's one of their favourite books at the library. So, you know, those sort of things are all just so beautiful in terms of hearing that someone else is enjoying the story. It's a lovely thing.
Yeah, that is lovely to share. And it's kind of one of the reasons we keep going, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Tell me, when did you write your first story?
Look, probably the first story I ever wrote was when I was probably about 2, and it was just a whole heap of scribbles that I made my mum and dad read to them, which was a really horrible thing to do as a child. And I think I've always written, but when I thought, no, I actually want to write to see if I can get published, was probably about 10 or 12 years ago. I think I really started, you know, down the writing track. And you know, I had 3 kids at the time who were well, I've still got 3 kids, of course, but they were all a bit little. So it was that thing of, like, can I actually finish a book? Can I actually finish it and edit it and have it to a space where I'm really happy with how it is? And then I started, going to workshops and, seeking out information and chatting to other authors and all of that sort of stuff, just to get my craft working well and really have an understanding of what I was doing and why I was doing it to some extent.
Yeah, and taking things seriously, learning a little more about what you should be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And then tell me now, let's sort of dive into your books. I'm just switching pages here. We've got, let's look at the fantasy and romance first. So we've got Aquila, we've got Sphenuris, Streamer, The Rise, and Blue.
Yes.
Sorry?
Sphenuris.
Sphenuris. So I actually say the Sphenuris. Thank you. All right. Yeah. Now, romance and fantasy altogether seems to be on the rise. Excuse the pun. Maybe, I know it's been around for a long time, and I say to people that I love a little bit of romance in my story, but I don't necessarily like romance just for itself. But tell me, why do you think the rise of romance and fantasy, why is it so popular?
I think, one of the things that I love about romance is that if it is a romance, you always know you are going to get a happy ending or a happy finale.
Yes.
Happy finale.
Yep.
You're going to get that. And I think as a reader, it is a lovely thing that even with the angst of the story or the mystery within it or whatever, that in the end it's going to come okay. Like I am one of these readers that really hates it when I'm invested in the story and I'm invested in the characters and, 4 pages from the end, one of them gets killed off. And I think, are you kidding me? I am through all this and then you leave me in that space. So I am one of those people that really, and I think, like in my other role that I do, I'm a counsellor, I'm a social worker. And I love the work that I do, and I love the, the role that I can play in that. But I get a lot of real life in that space. Yeah. And I think a lot of people get a lot of real life. And I think it's nice sometimes just to be able to escape into that fantasy and into that romance and know that you're going to get the good outcome in the end and know that you can really fall in love with the characters and it's okay because they'll be protected, I think is one of those things that, a lot of people appeal to a lot of people.
Yeah. I think that is such a lovely sort of connection to draw, is that real life is tough. Yeah. There is a lot of real life. It's hard for many people, and to be able to escape into that where you can be swept along by that story and know that it ends. Yeah. Oh, I really love that. Yeah. That's great, Sue-Ellen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, you've had a number of publishers, because I know the Rise is part of Dead Set Press Australia series, as is Talonmark. You mentioned Penguin Random House. Tell us about sort of traditional publishing versus indie. Do you like one better than other? How has your experience been as an author being published?
I think there are beautiful things and tough things about both spaces. Marketing is not one of my strong points and is not probably something that I really, really enjoy. I'd rather be writing. So, going traditionally published certainly helps with that because, some of that stuff is taken up by the publisher. So that in itself, and you have a team supporting you and, you have fabulous editors. And so that in itself is a really lovely thing. But also, often you're a small fish in a big pond. So, that in itself, and traditionally published, being traditionally published is a very slow process to a large extent. So, while there's things that I love about it, there's things that I go, I wish that could be quicker or, whatever as well. And I think with the indie published, you have the ability to get your book out much quicker than perhaps you would if you were traditionally published. You have full choice on the cover, like you have full choice in when it's released and where it's released. But, again, marketing isn't my strong point. So, my reach is certainly not as much as it would be with normal public, if I go traditionally published.
Yeah.
So, there's pros and cons for both, I think.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I've written a story that I really love and I really want to get out there, but it just, if young adult fantasy, for example, at the moment is really hard to get through with a traditional publisher, then there's not very many of them that they're pushing through at the moment. It tends to be more contemporary that they're looking for. So, if that's what I love to write and that's what I want, that's the story I want to write, then indie published is the way that I get it out there.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good. Tell me then about writing anthologies. So putting a story in with, and you've got a whole stack of fabulous, you've been writing in, putting stories into anthologies for some years.
Yeah.
How does it feel when you're contributing to that? Do you get together with the other authors? Do you, how does it work, or how has it worked for you in the past?
Look, and it's been a little bit different for all of them. There's some where I've really, there's been the theme of the story and I've chatted to other authors who are in it and we've sort of come up with an idea of what we're going to do. And then there's other ones where, the call's just gone out and I've thought, that's a lovely, that might be a lovely space to be in. So there's an anthology that I'm writing for at the moment that is coming out later in the year, which is all around fables and myths. And so I'm writing a modern story of Hades and Persephone.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a little bit steamy, that one.
Yeah,
and, and that's the money from that is coming out and will support Ronald McDonald House. So, that sort of stuff I really love to be able to do as well, because it's lovely. I get such support with my writing and it's great to be able to support other areas as well from doing my.
Yeah, fantastic. Tell me your favourite story or favourite anthology then, and or am I asking you to talk about your favourite babies yet again?
I was about to say, it's like choosing your favourite child. Look, I think it's a bit like the first love. I think the first story that you get published is always has that sort of tender space in your heart, I think. So that was Aquila for me. But every story, I think, as an author, you fall in love with every story that you write, and the ones that you choose to publish. I've got stories that I've written that are probably not where I want them to be, and if I'm going to publish them, I would want to do more work on them before I get them out. So I think the ones that get to the end and you go, no, I really want to send this one out to the world. Those are the ones that are those, really special places in your heart where, like I could talk about my books all day.
Yeah, okay. We haven't got anything to do. It's a Friday. All right. Sue-Ellen, you are, of course, a multi-talented author, and you also provide workshops. And I really was interested in a number of your workshops because they cover the whole spectrum of, what we've just been talking about, which is workshops for adults and workshops for kids and workshops for teens, really. And some of the testimonials there are lovely. So let's look at using psychological tools to create compelling characters, unleashing your muse, thinking about world building, all of those things. So how do you run your workshops and how do people get into them, basically?
So how I run my workshops is that I'm there with a whole heap of different tools, I guess, because of my work in that, in the psych world and in the counselling world. There's a lot of things I think that are really helpful in writing. So there's a lot of ways that we can look at why people do the things they do and, what might have a character who's in trauma, for example, how they might react, and how we put that into our story so that it's a really believable space. How you might have a character that might be going through grief and what that might mean for your story, or using things like Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is, a great psychological tool that we can use to look at where our characters are at and what's the most important thing for them at this point in time. So those sort of things I think can be really interesting. And I love to be able to, in workshops, have people thinking a little bit more about their characters or about, the world that they're writing in, because, the world that they're writing in, especially for fantasy, can be a character all within itself. So, having thinking about it a little bit deeper and a little bit, thinking outside the box a little bit, I guess, in terms of being able to go, how do we make your story as believable to readers? How do we make your story something that you know really well, so that when you are writing a character, you know that character and you know what they might do. So that's what I love to be able to do, whether it's with adults or, it's fascinating working with teenagers at the moment. So many teenagers are into the horrors and the thrillers. And so it's great to be able to, be in that space with them, even though that's not particularly, when I was a teenager, lots of Stephen King, lots of, so much now. Yeah, but it's great to be able to go back into that space with them and really see their imagination, go wild. And I do a lot of workshops with schools. And so I have a lot of different props that I use when I'm helping kids to develop stories, because I think kids particularly are very if you have that initial idea, then the imagination and where they can go with that is, particularly fantastic. So I've got one thing that I do with young kids where I've got a box of buttons, because when I wrote the jacket, it was because I found this beautiful button one day and I started wondering where it would come from. So I've got this beautiful box of buttons that I take with me. And one of the young kids that I was talking to at one stage about it had this button, and I said to him, so where do you think it came from? And he said, well, I think it came from a pair of jeans. And I said, okay, and who owned the jeans? And he said, Darth Vader. And I said, well, so underneath, Darth Vader's, big black suit, he wears jeans.
He's got his jeans.
Yeah.
Love it.
And he said, yeah. And I said, so what sort of shirt he got on? He said, it's a T-shirt with a slogan on it. I'm going, oh, this is so cool. Darth Vader with the jeans and a slogan T-shirt underneath, the big scary thing. I thought that's awesome. So, kids can be so creative in terms of thinking outside the box. Yeah. So in terms of the workshops, there are workshops that I run that people, get me in for. So some writers clubs, for example, have got me in to run some workshops for them, or going into schools. So people often just reach out and see if there's a workshop I can run for them, and we go from there.
I want to talk to you about Genre Blitz, 6 stories in one day, a workshop that allows kids and teenagers to explore 6 different genres and create stories for each one. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was some fun that we had a couple of years ago when we wrote that. We have a really fantastic library in Gladstone that's really supportive of, writers and authors and readers, and does a fabulous job at terms of promoting, local writers. So we did one for the teenagers during the school holidays, and it was really about, because I noticed that a lot of kids were doing horrors and thrillers and, that sort of stuff, which is absolutely fantastic. But I just thought, how fun would it be to also explore some of the other genres as well? So we do those too, but we also do, a little bit of romance, which is really interesting. We do some fantasy, stuff, some sci-fi stuff. I'm trying to think of the other one now. Can't think of the other one, but yes, we've got the sort of the 6 happening, which is a lot of fun in terms of looking at the different tropes and the different, styles of writing, I guess, each of the different genres and what readers are looking for in that space.
Yeah, because we do love our tropes in genre fiction. Don't be messing with it. As you say, don't be killing somebody off in the last 4 pages. What are you thinking? All right.
Exactly.
Now, I asked about plotter or pantser. Tell me where you are on that kind of spectrum of just pour it out or just plan it all before you begin.
Yeah, look, when I started writing, I was very much of a pantser. So I sort of knew where the story was starting, obviously, and had a bit of an idea of where it was going to finish. And I would often say to my husband, oh, like, I didn't expect the character to take me here, but it looks like this is where we're going. And he'd go, what do you mean? And I'd go, well, they just said something. And I went, okay, well, that's where we're going. And I still, I still love that. As an author, I love that when that happens, when the character suddenly says something and you go, oh, that's really interesting. But I am a bit more of a plotter now as well, because I find that plotting out some of the points in each of the different chapters helps me to not go, oh, I'm not sure what's going to happen now. So, and you have that blank space as an author where you sit there and go, oh, I'm not sure what's going to happen. So having some sort of plan helps me to just push that through a little bit. And it doesn't mean that, you can't be flexible and go, okay, well, I'm going to put a couple more chapters in here. We're going to go this space and then we'll come back to that. But it just means that it gives me a road to navigate, even if I take detours on the way.
Yeah. Okay. When you started out, what helped you most?
Look, I think there was quite a few things I think that probably really helped. One of the biggest things was being able to talk to other authors. And one of the things that I love about, being in this space, being an author, is that by and large, they are a beautiful, beautiful bunch of people. And, they want to help and they want to talk about, oh, have you heard this publisher's open, or this is what they're looking for, or, reviewing each other's books, and I think it's that thing of it doesn't, and how do we celebrate each other? Because it doesn't matter that somebody else is doing fantastic, because there's no reader that only reads one book. Readers read all the time. So there's space for everybody to be out there and having their books celebrated and cheered on. And so that's, and there's nothing like being with a bunch of authors and going, this character, this is where I'm at, and I just don't know what I'm going to do with them. And being able to problem solve that with a bunch of other authors to the point where you go, oh, okay, great, I know what I'm going to do now, is a beautiful thing. So I think being able to be around other authors, being able to go to, really fabulous writing workshops. We've got some really fantastic workshops in Australia and conferences, and we're really lucky to have that. And I think being able to access that and access the knowledge of a lot of different people is a fantastic thing in terms of knowing our craft. So I think those are probably two of the main things that really helped me as I was starting to write.
Fantastic. You are quite correct in that we have an amazingly generous writing community in Australia, don't we?
Yeah.
We might be small, but we punch above our
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Tell me then words of advice. So you've said when starting out, it was connecting to that author crowd. Yep. Your words of advice for aspiring authors, because hey, people, there are many, many covers on the wall behind Sue-Ellen. So she has many books under her belt. What is your advice for those starting out?
I think, look, there's probably a few things. Reaching out to the writer community, even though it can be really scary to start with. Like I said, they're a beautiful bunch. So definitely reach out and get support from other authors and writers and, people who are just part of the publishing world. Certainly going to conferences. I've met a hell of a lot of publishers and editors, and they're all beautiful people as well. They have, their things that they have to stick to in terms of how many books they can take on and all that sort of stuff. But even just chatting to them can be a really fabulous way of learning out more about the industry. I also think as a new writer, I think it's really easy to get very protective about your book and very protective about your writing. And sometimes I think that closes us off to listening to possible advice or things about editing, all that sort of stuff. And I guess one of the things that is really important is to listen to what other people might have to say to you. So perhaps there's this part of the structure of your book that still isn't working, or there's something that's just not quite ringing true, or those sort of things. And I think if you get sort of similar feedback from a couple of different people, then it's really worth taking notice of and going, okay, I need to look at this. And I think, like one of my books that I'm writing at the moment, I've got a fabulous critique group that, we share weekly a chapter of each of our books. And, one of them just gave me some feedback last week that I went, oh, of course, how did I not see that? Holy dooly. So, like even with experience of writing, there are still things that we miss as authors. So it's great to be able to do that. But it's also that thing, I think, that sometimes when people get very enthusiastic about editing, especially if they don't really understand the editing process, sometimes they can want to change our voice. And I think as authors, we need to be really protective of our voice and how we tell our story, because we're the only ones who can tell the story in that way. So I think it's really important to be able to go, I can take on the suggestion, I can take on the idea, but I need to be able to say it in my voice, because that's how I write my story. So that, and probably the last thing, and I guess this was a really interesting thing that I was thinking about from one of the conferences that I'd gone to, where I was talking to some new writers, and they were saying, like they'd had a book for 3 or 4 years that they'd been trying to get published and hadn't been able to get there. And so sometimes listening to someone chatting, whether it's up on stage or down in the crowd saying, oh, like it was my second book and I got it published straight away, can be a little bit like, heart-wrenching, because you go, and it's
disheartening.
Yeah, absolutely, because it is a difficult thing, especially if you're looking at getting traditionally published. It is a difficult thing. It's a hard road to go down. And especially if it's something like picture books, because there's only so many of them that are published. They're an expensive thing to do. So, there's only so many authors that can be taken on. And so I think, I had a chat to the group about sometimes it's really good to think about what success means for you. So if success means that you're going to get published, awesome. If that's where you're going for, fantastic. But have a think about what happens after that then, because does that mean that you need to continue getting published to be a success? Or does that mean there's another definition of success for you? And I guess for me, part of that is knowing that I've written a story that I love and that I'm really happy with, and I'm happy to put it out into the world. And that's my success. So, yeah.
Very, very hard to separate our work life and our writing life, isn't it? It's nice to be able to sort of tell a story in a different way. And I think that's another element of fantasy and sci-fi that works for me, is that you can tell that same story that you're trying to tell in a contemporary fashion, but cloud it, merge it a little bit with, a different world, or a simpler world where you can take some of the complexity and that rawness of the day out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like we only need to look at, like one of my favorite books that I've just read at the moment is Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which I've just loved. Like I loved the book and I went straight in, and I'm listening to the audiobook at the moment. And it's, like it's vampire, werewolf and humans, which, there are so many stories out there, but it was a really different story and a really different take on it. And I think that's the thing that, readers really love, is how do we tell a story that only we can tell, because it's our story and we're writing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are never enough dragon stories. There are never enough vampire stories. I will admit to just having been watching the Discovery of Witches with, of course, has vampires and demons and witches in it. Yes. And I love the history in it, because that was the author, Deborah Harkness. That was her work in that, she was a history and all those kind of things. And so the whole story is steeped in that. And if you love that, the combination, and of course, there's huge romance happening there, which is fabulous. And I didn't realise that they had season 3 out. So I thought, oh my God, so I'm pedaling my bike and watching that.
I love that. Yeah.
Spurts on the telly, which is good. And it's as you say, it's how to tell that story, your own story, which there is always a twist.
Oh, absolutely. Like I've got a middle grade book coming out in August as well, which is about a young girl who has magic. And, like if we look at Harry Potter, but there are lots of other ways that we can talk about magic and how magic occurs, and the world that it's in. And so, I think it's that thing of there is never we're never going to run out of stories. You know what's the thing? There's only 7 original stories, or there's 7 original ideas, or whatever it is. But I always think, we're never going to run out of stories because people always tell them in different ways, and that's really important.
Yeah, I love it. Very good. Sue-Ellen, we could talk for hours, but we won't. We're going to let our listeners go, and we're going to keep going. Let me ask you, where is the best place for people to find you online, whether for your stories or for your workshops?
So probably the best place is my webpage, so www.suellenpashley.com.au. That's probably the best way to connect with me, to look at my, stories and what's available. But I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as well. If people want to search me out on there, just as Sue-Ellen Pashley author, they can find me there too.
Very good. There's a little bit of cricket on your Instagram page, I noticed.
Big fan of cricket. I was able to go down to Brisbane. It was a very, very, very hot day. I don't know how players managed it, but it was very exciting.
Yeah, nice to see in real life. I remember going to the MCG many years ago, and this was in the era of Tangles Walker and Dennis Lilly and all that, which shows you how old I am. But went to a Boxing Day test, and it was, in some ways, it was the longest day. There was like 2 people out, I can't even remember who they were playing, 2 people out, and it was really hot and slow and long, and it was only sort of Tangles entertaining the crowd. That was the way they got us through. And I missed one of the outs because I went to the bathroom. That was just and I just sort of watch it on the telly, and then at least you can get the replay and all of those kind of things. But
absolutely.
Yes, I think. And countries that don't have cricket don't necessarily understand the game the same way. I find things like maybe gridiron or some of those. I'm just going to say rugby for you in northern states. What the hell? But anyway.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, Talon Mark is why we've been chatting. And when does that come out? So that's with Dead Set Press. And
yes, that's right. So that comes out at the end of August, on August.
End of August,
30th,
lovely.
Very exciting. So I'll be up in Rockhampton for Capricorn, and that's going to be release day then. So it'll be very exciting to have released.
Yeah, very nice. I hope you sell millions and millions of copies, and that everybody who goes to Capricorn is going to love it.
Beautiful. I hope so. Yeah, I'm excited about it. So, and I love the cover. So, it's always nice when you have a book where you love the cover. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we have got a sneaky look at the cover. So we'll be popping it on the podcast when it does come out, in case you're wondering. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Really enjoyed the chat, and bring on more dragons.
Thank you. Oh, I'm with you 100%. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Thanks. See ya.
Thank you, Sue-Ellen, for an absolutely delightful chat, and it was so good to talk to you, even though you were in Queensland and I was down here in cold Melbourne. What did you take from the interview?
Dragons. Dragons. Who doesn't love a dragon story? I absolutely love it. And I even have one that I've been playing around with in the background with a book that I'm trying to query, but it's not getting anywhere. But anyway, it's a great book. I love it. And it's got dragons. So who doesn't love dragons? And it's so funny because while Sue-Ellen was talking about the kind of dragon stories, I thought, what about Pete's dragon?
Oh,
that was mine when I was little.
Right.
We're not talking about what it actually means, but the dragon itself, very cool. Very cool.
Right.
I love that movie from when I was younger. So yeah, dragons. But anyway, so workshops,
yes,
which is marvelous because of course we love a good workshop, love a good writing workshop.
And what beautiful feedbacks you had from the young people.
Yes.
And interestingly, the different grades, the little ones sort of take things at face value, but the kids in the older grades and, getting emotional about what it means to them and understanding some of the subtle messages within middle grade. And, you've written middle grade, so that is so hard to frame.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that you've got readers of all spectrums as well in that age groups. You've got the really advanced readers to the struggling readers, and being able to pitch something that is just fun, that kids will relate to as well. And yeah, I loved listening to Sue-Ellen talking about that. And one of the other things that actually she was discussing in regard to editing, because I'm editing book 5 of my young adult series at the moment, actually, and I'm having to go back through my old books just to, for consistency and to make sure that I've referenced something correctly, and because I am a bit of a pantser, and as she was saying, it's kind of hard to keep track of if you're pantsing it all. It's where did that idea come from? And I had a question to myself as I was rereading some of the books, because I was rereading them and it's like, wow, that's a really good sentence. I'm amazing. And then I thought, wait, was that me or my editor? Because my editor is marvelous. And do you know what? I love my editors. They make me sound so much better. So I'm like, pretty sure that was mine. Wow, I am really good.
Yeah.
All right.
That's good. I'll keep going for another day, another story.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's really good when your ego gives you a big kick up the butt and tells you how awful you are, because our brains are terrible things, and that's what they do. And self-doubt is a massive one when it comes to writing. So being able to reread things and thinking, actually, no, that is good. I'm pleased with what I was doing there. I didn't know I was doing it, but you know what? It sounds amazing.
Good.
So
And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is the thing that I say to people all the time in coaching. They go, oh, but. So it's, 100% in the drawer, 90% out the door. Just put things out there, and readers are very forgiving. But please get things edited. Yes. But they are forgiving if it's your first novel, a novel. If the story is strong enough, if your voice is strong enough, it'll carry them through those little glitches that you're a little bit awkward. Sometimes your brain will trip over them and you go, oh, okay, that's right. But you'll keep going.
And I'm the queen of M dashes. So I love my editors. My editors probably don't love me. So you know what? It's give and take.
It is give and take. Indeed.
Yeah.
All right, so it's a tougher quote. What have you got, Laurie?
Yes, I actually thought I'd go.
Wait, did I tell you I didn't take the answer to?
Oh no, riddle. What's that? Yes, tell me the riddle.
So the PMI, the History Victorian Historical Library, who have a Friday riddle, and we read the riddle, which I'm going to read it to you again. So just in case people want to remember where they were. So let me come back to my bookmarks. On a former typhus road, we have made a grassed abode, first installed in case of Russ attack, on Lawyer's Point, not looking back. For teaching boys we were acquired to ensure their martial pride. Our own carriages both have we, sharing our site with heritage trees, made to pound to pieces in our prime, now a place for kids to climb. And I thought it might have been the cannons outside the Queenscliff Fort, but in fact it was the 80-pounder cannons in Hopetown Gardens in Alstonwick. So I was on the right track.
You were close, cannons. It was cannons. There are cannons floating around everywhere. So all over the coast, aren't they?
Yes, all over the coast. They are absolutely. So I am not going to tell you the next Friday one, because I have no idea, so it's going to make me look even sillier because I'm not a great riddle. I am no Bilbo Baggins, perhaps I should say. Not a hobbit.
Well done, you got close. I had no idea.
Yeah. All right, so now give me your quote.
I thought I'd go Anne McCaffrey, since we were talking about dragons, and this one I really like. So it's not that's what writing is all about, after all, making others see what you have put down on the page and believing that it does or could exist and that you want to go there. So, obviously a bit easier when you've got your non-fiction or you've got your contemporary, but when it comes to fantasy and science fiction, putting it down and making it believable and that it could exist and that you could want to go there. I love that.
Yeah, that's
really
what
good. Writing is.
I like it. And of course I love Anne McCaffrey's book, so that's a pretty easy one. Okay, I'm giving you one from Annie Proulx. So the writer, you should write because you love the shape of stories and sentences and the creation of different words on a page. And I really love that, because different words. So that's, that's the sesquipedalian loquaciousness. Who would love that term? But you should write because you love the shape of stories and sentences and the creation of different words on a page. So thank you, Annie Prue.
Lovely.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's it this week, is it?
I think that is it. We could
have
chat
waffled
here for
forever.
hours, but
Yes.
we just need to make save stuff for next time because we might run out of words.
Yep.
Absolutely not. Never do.
No.
And I think that's a good thing for writers. So all we need to do now is tell you that the book review is one of Eugen Bacon's beautiful stories. So have a listen. Don't hang up until you hear that.
Excellent.
And we need to sign off with
with
a reminder to
read more
Aussie
books.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
A review of Secondhand Daylight by Eugen Bacon and Andrew Hook. Mind-bending time travel and Melbourne landmarks, what's not to love? As always, Eugen Bacon has stamped her unique voice in Secondhand Daylight, ably co-authored by Andrew Hook, a challenging, quirky read that balances blink-of-an-eye time travel with exploration of family, friend and lover relationships in a somewhat enviable future Australia. Needs to be read in a quiet place where you can concentrate on the loops and swirls of the two main characters as they bounce around the time stream. Delightful, evocative, spare prose. A great read. Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.
Let's meet again, where magic happens.